Yeah, I got the notification that it is in fact live on YouTube right now. Yeah. 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 Okay, we got a chat. It says I still can't hear you, and JJ says, "Hey guys, invite me again." Wait, let me. Yeah, yeah. Either that or I don't know if it's their phones or what's going on. Um, you only live once, you know. I mean, oh wait, I can hear something. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can. I can hear myself. So either that or I don't know if it's their phones or what. Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on? You only live once. Yeah, I can't on the stream. Your audio is non-existent. Oh wait, I can hear. Yeah, I can.
There it goes. Hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah. Hmm.
It's not coming through your headset.
I don't know what the problem be like.
There we go.
Oh.
Now the audio should be coming through. I was a dumbass and I had it on push to talk because I'd set up OBS for Twitch earlier, and you don't want me, you know, if I'm streaming a game and that sort of thing. That's not what you want coming through. You just want the when I'm talking about the game or whatever. So I put it on push to talk because I'm so used to do that while playing games. Derp.
All right, now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can hear you
we
just
can
fine.
hear you.
All right. The stream?
Oh, in the chat.
Yeah, let me.
I'd set up OBS.
Yeah, your voice is coming through nice and clearly. How's my audio, by the
Thank
way?
God.
Okay,
It's good.
Audio's fine. All right,
Yep.
technical
We're
difficulties.
just
Yay, capitalism.
Fuck you, OPS.
No, OBS is nice. It's nice for this one thing because I'm going to be playing videos while we're hanging out, and I couldn't do that earlier. I tried doing that when we were on Hangouts, and it was just a jumbled mess. So
Thank God I finally got a haircut.
Nice. So did I. So, yeah, like the title of the stream states, we're going to be talking about anarcho. I believe you said it was anarcho-capitalism. That's kind of what the
Yes.
title states.
yeah, so that AnCaptain America. No.
I like that
Captain
title.
Well, I was trying to come up
well-
with something clever for war, but I was like civil discussion. We'll have it be a Young Turk / AnCaptain title. Wow,
War never changes.
just a civil discussion.
Yep. It's,
Of course.
Dang, we need what's his name in here.
Is it supposed to be Captain?
Oh.
I don't know if that was on purpose or
No, that was when I redid it. It's terrible. When I
I thought maybe
well,
you were wanting to discuss something that I wasn't aware of. I don't know what a Captain is.
Maybe I misspelt it on the original too, but I'm pretty sure I mistyped it in this one, but it was typed correctly the first time. Dang it! Alright, maybe we'll just cancel
Captain
this and we'll have a number 3. So I can fix the typo. Whatever. I'll blame it on autocorrect.
have this on regular
Screw
hangout.
you, Google!
Alright, so my brother was not able to join us for last week, but last week we were talking about economics in general. It's mostly just capitalism versus communism, or, I mean, anything that's basically Marxism. And this is one of the things that they always state is, for some reason, people in of that ideology, they like to separate Marxism from socialism and capitalism, and communism. And you're just like, wait a minute. Did you guys not read anything he wrote? He laid out the foundations for both of those ideologies. And actually, he laid out the foundations for fascism, but that wasn't something he wrote in depth on. He, from my understanding, is his analysis of the problems with capitalism and his establishment of socialism. And socialism, two schools of thought came out of that. The communists, which is what most people call like Leninist or Stalinist or Maoist and things like that, and the fascists. Those both come out of the school of thought that socialism created. At least that's my understanding of it. And yet, for some reason, people will look at the USSR and be like, oh, well, that's communist. They'll either say that the USSR was communist and everything that happened in the USSR was the fault of communism. Or they will say, no, that was just Leninist, that was just Stalinist, that wasn't quite communism, because then they consider the ideal of what communism should be, which is a stateless society. So
Yeah. And the workers owning the means of production, and if they'll say that was not true communism,
yes,
because no, it wasn't stateless, which I remember I was arguing with a Marxist dickhead on Twitter where he said, "Oh, socialism can't exist in a lone state, or communism couldn't exist in a lone state." But he then says it is a stateless society, and
okay, so
like we said on the last stream.
Yeah, hang on a second. So they're saying they can hear me, but barely. Are you guys having any? Just maybe I need to.
Now I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to adjust the settings a little bit. So that way.
Yeah, I think that's how OBS works. You have to adjust and shit.
I'm on the stream right now. I don't know if it's just because I don't have headphones in, but your audio sounds pretty good.
All right. So I bumped up the audio. Let me know if that's too much.
Hey guys,
or
turn up
not
your
enough.
phones then.
No, but
Yeah.
so what they're saying is
putting
my
your butt-
audio is low, but everybody else is coming through clear. So since
Okay.
I'm using OBS, OBS is changing my audio
Okay,
over
Max.
the years. So I can hear you just fine through Hangouts. I want to make sure that people watching the stream can hear it, because I've got that
Yeah.
muted at the moment, so that way you're not getting a feedback loop.
Yeah.
All right. So Deuce,
Yeah.
just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if my audio is good. Now I did turn it up a bit. Let me know if it's too high or if that's good.
I guess just keep the OBS
Yeah.
tab thing.
Yeah, I've got the volume open
yeah.
at the moment, so if I need to adjust it, but we'll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about
Which
that.
it's kind of yeah. Oh no, you're fine. But it was kind of interesting. Communism. So I swear to God, it had to have been either he was talking about communism or socialism or both. Can't exist in a lone state. We need international control, but it could be stateless. And I'm thinking, anarcho-communism. It seems a bit oxymoronic because a definition I got is I'm actually going to pull it up right now for anarchism or anarchy. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to let HUMANe or his brother give their thoughts on your guys' thoughts on those type of statements and the whole not true communism and about the whole means of production thing that socialists and communists love to bandy on about when they ever talk about it.
All right,
Well,
Daniel.
yeah, I would say, in my opinion, those two lines of thought stem from entitled, lazy people. That's kind of the only place that this can come from. It's people who feel they deserve something without actually having invented, created something, designed something, formulated a process, created a procedure, or come out with a product of their own, or put in their own time and effort into the work to understand that the money they get back, the means that they get back, that's their time and effort. So this is kind of, I mean, we have, I guess, a modern day thought would be like the Bernie Sanders group.
Yeah.
Who just feel they should just get paid for so they can get free schooling. They should just get paid for to have all of their debts just wiped away.
Yeah.
Somebody has to pay for that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
I got the definition of anarchism, the belief in the abolition of all government and the organization of society on a voluntary, cooperative basis without recourse to force or compulsion. That is the definition
Okay.
of anarchism.
Yeah, and I would accept that
So-
definition. So so I'd just like to piggyback before we get too turned away from this topic. This is something that popped into my head earlier today. So I was rewatching the Lauren versus Stefan Monalou debate, and it's something that struck me was, what if Marx didn't actually believe what he was writing in the work that he was putting out there? He was just trying to get out of work, and he was like, well, I don't want to work in a factory. I've been in school all my life. I've been a an intellectual. How do I get what I want out of life without ever having to work? Maybe if I can convince all of these stupid people working that that they should just give their stuff to me. What if I came up with a system where so I'm using my brain to overcome a problem of I don't want to work, I just want to get stuff. And so if I think things through and if I come up with this way of thinking where people just give me stuff and I'm like, oh, I got rewarded for thinking, then then I don't have to work and I don't have to do any manual labor. All right, so let's see if I write this down and get people to adopt this idea. And he was just using that to get out of work originally, and then he's seeing all the death and destruction. He's like, come on, guys, it was just a goof.
Yeah, and people will say it's wrong to bring up how under communism or communist regimes you would have a total of, and I would love to have a consistent number. You got at minimum 72 to at maximum 100 million deaths under communist regimes, but they will, their ultimate defense is means of production, and it was not a stateless society in their opinion. And just things
how
like
would
that.
How would they run the country and have
Communism.
this sort of economic growth as they're hoping, this utopian growth of their economy without having a governing body?
Yeah, I don't know. I never
You
understood.
can't run
how
a company
yeah.
with nobody in charge. Doesn't happen.
Yeah. So that's something that I
Ever.
never understood, and I've been listening to debates all week, and I cannot seem to understand how they think they're gonna. So I understand they're saying. So it starts off. Well, this is a weird thing. They say that you have to start off with capitalism, and then from capitalism, then it transitions into socialism, and then from socialism, then it gets to communism. And I had a buddy talk to me earlier this week, or earlier today actually, and he said, "Okay, step 1, think about putting on underpants. Step 2, put on underpants. Step 4, profit." It's like, that's what I think
Well, what I'm
communism
seeing-
is kind of built like.
What
You're
I'm
like,
seeing in their line of thought is the reason it has to stem from capitalism is because capitalism is proven that makes money, that grows an economy, that spurs technology, it spurs incentive for better products, faster means of production. That's the whole reason for the Industrial Revolution, is because of capitalism.
Also,
People are constantly trying to get more with less effort. That's the whole purpose of it. But since they have to start with that, socialism, the next step, is kind of a twist, I think, on all men are created equal. Now, on our Constitution, that's basically saying all men have the same rights. All men can go out and pursue their happiness. They have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We have our Bill of Rights. That applies to all men. But when you say that all men are equal, as in equal talent, equal skill, and their time is of equal weight, their output is equal. Once they start trying to balance that, then the thought process is, so then everybody should be earning equal. Everybody should be able to live equal. Everybody should have equal housing, equal money, equal food, equal income, because we're all equal. It should be balanced, but that is not the case. People are diverse just like every other creature on this planet, and there are some extremely bright, hardworking, intellectual people that will push and drive technology and the economy. And then there's a massive handful of people that just will sit on their butt and milk it for everything that they can because they don't want to work.
Yeah.
And that's the majority of people.
Okay, and so I'm going to stop you there. I do have a video clip to play, and it's very much related to what you were just saying, but I do notice we have somebody else that joined the chat, but Son of Lucifer, can you say something? Because have you been trying? Okay. So I wasn't sure if you've been trying to chime in and we just couldn't hear you, so I wanted to make sure that was going through.
Yeah.
All right, so so I have an a clip prepared for tonight. So the actual sound quality is a little off, and the video quality is a little off, and that's not something on my end. That's because this is a copyrighted bit of material, and I couldn't. Oh, dang it! Hang on a second.
This is my
Stupid
jam.
alarm is going off again.
Woo!
One of these days I'll remember to disable that alarm because it's supposed to be 7:30 a.m. and I never remember that. So anyway, so the quality of the video is not on my end or OBS. It is the actual copy, because for some reason I was looking for a version of this on YouTube and I could not find the exact clip. But there is, for some reason, the entire movie on YouTube, and that's why the audio is off, is to to avoid the copyright things. So
Yeah.
give me 1 second to set this up. All right.
This is gonna be cool if it actually works, or if YouTube's gonna be a dick to us again.
Well, sip it slowly, everybody. That's the last of the water.
And as a straight man, I am not into
What's
dicks.
different about that? It's all we've had
Okay.
for 2 days.
I don't think none of us
Random.
Hang on a second. I'm gonna mute everybody in the Hangouts for a second.
Don't worry, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, if you would mute yourselves, that would be awesome. All right.
But after this is gone, there isn't any more.
Just a minute. We're partners, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we split everything 50-50, don't we?
Yeah, I know, but...
Now, wait a minute. Never mind you know. I know. Whether on land or sea makes no difference. Partners are partners. Well, you've got 2 beans. I haven't got any. How come? You wouldn't want to share that way, would you?
No. Yeah. Wait a minute.
What's the matter?
It's a small one. I want to give you the big one.
Oh,
My mother always told me to treat my friends like that.
well, that's very
Oh,
nice.
Give me the biggest of everything.
That's swell. Mm. Wait a minute. What are you doing? What are you doing?
I'm going to eat this half.
Why? You got 2 halves. I haven't got any.
No, you don't. You shouldn't eat so fast. You get
What
indigestion.
kind of a partner are you? No, I'm entitled to half of that bean. Well, come on.
Yeah.
Better.
Now, Algy, stop it. You ought to be ashamed.
Always trying to make a hog out of himself.
Salad.
Now go ahead and eat it.
This is mine.
Go ahead.
You're going to eat this whole half a bean?
I've always got to give you the best of it.
On the stream, it's coming through crystal clear.
Take it easy now and chew it up good.
Mm-hmm.
Chew it up good.
I'm going to make it last. Don't worry. I'm going to put it from here over to here, here to here.
Go ahead.
Then sometimes I'll put it up here. It's up there now.
Where's it now?
It's gone.
So I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. It's classic Abbott and Costello, Pardon My Sarong, and that is like a perfect example of what communism actually like. The things that communists tend to overlook is one guy used all of his stuff, and then he's looking, hey, I only have I don't have any, and you've got all of that, and you're like, it's because you just ate your stuff. You had 2 beans, and I had 2 beans. You ate your 2 beans, and now you're looking, hey, why do you still have 2 beans? That's what happens when communists look at the rich people in charge, and they're like, hey, they've got all of that stuff, and it's like, well, what did you do? They were spending all of their time, all of their energy, building a company. Like, I was listening to the stream about the guy who's in charge of Whole Foods. He was working 60-hour weeks. He put himself into massive debt. He was barely making a profit. And now people are looking at, or now somebody from a communist would be like, oh, now he's got this huge multi-million-dollar business. Let's take all of his stuff. And it's like, but he sacrificed his time and energy when he was younger. He sacrificed about, I think he said, 3 decades of his life to build his company up, working 60-hour weeks, putting himself through all of this stuff. And now the employees who work under him are like, oh, he makes all of this money. We should take it from him because we're doing all the work. And it's like,
Yeah, that's bullshit.
the communists, like, you already spent your stuff. You already used your time and energy. He didn't get to see the benefits of it, and now that he's actually seeing the fruits of it, of his labor, you want to take away his fruits because he has more now than you have. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's
People are
incredibly
lazy as fuck.
selfish. It's incredibly selfish, and as I pointed out in the last stream, I gave an example that capitalism rewards good behavior, and I feel like to explain that again, maybe there's newer viewers or whatever. But for instance, let's say Humane Mind ran a company that specialized in food. Like, let's say he was a owner of a McDonald's, and let's say he was treating the employees like garbage, the food was horrible, and the pay was a disgrace. If people found out, they could easily punish McDonald's by not going there. They could go to, like, Burger King or Wendy's or wherever. And under capitalism, you have many options of where to get your fast food. You have many options to go to other places for business, to be a customer of their business. And this means of production bullshit that communists and socialists go on about with the workers should own the means of production, when basically Humane Mind summed up everything I would have said as to why the workers don't deserve the means of production. And also, I don't believe that the workers would be capable of dealing with all those pages of regulations, dealing with all the stress that would come of running a company and having all those lawyers sift through all that paperwork for all the regulations.
Okay, and there is another thing that I asked somebody else in a debate that I was having with somebody in the comments of one of these videos. This was about a month or that's probably longer than that ago. So they say that under communism, people can own private property, and that they can own their house, they can own the things inside their house, their food, and all of that sort of thing. They're okay with that being private property or personal property, depending on who you talk to. They'll have a different definition. But they're not okay with people owning the means of production. And that's something that I don't think they have a clear definition of the means of production. And this is, to illustrate this, I gave an example. So I have a garage in my house, and if I decided to take that garage, and I decided to take some lumber and build a table in my garage, and then somebody else came by and was like, oh, hey, I really like that table. I will trade you some lumber for that table. And so I'm like, okay. So then I give them the table, and I got wood, and it's more wood than I used to make the table, so now I can make a table and a chair. And then somebody else comes by and is like, oh, hey, a table and a chair. I'll trade you that for even more. And then I can keep this cycle up. And eventually I've got a line of people outside of my garage all wanting tables and chairs. But I can only produce so much in a day. So I'm like, I've got all this extra wood, and I've got all the tools I need to build tables and chairs. Okay, I'm going to go to my neighbor and see if he's going to help me. And I'm like, I will show him the process of building these tables and chairs that everybody wants. And then I can sleep, and when I'm sleeping, he can build tables and chairs. And then when I wake up, I will build tables and chairs. And then we keep this process up, and eventually my entire garage is too small, and so then we have to expand to a larger space, and then I've got 10 people all building tables and chairs. And it gets there's so much management where I stop building the tables and chairs myself that I start doing the management. Well, at some point, that became the means of production. At what point does it become, the means of production, and they get to seize everything? Even though the entire organization, the entire system is only made possible because of my original actions and my original input. I was the one who was running everything. I was the one who started it all. And for some reason, communism will look at that same system, and they'll look at the larger facility where tables and chairs are being built and where I'm just doing management, or where I'm not actually adding anything or contributing anything, and they're like, oh, well, you're not doing anything. You shouldn't get any of their profits. They should all be the workers because they're doing all the work.
Without you, they wouldn't have anywhere to work in the first place.
At which point did everything I do become the means of production? And that's where they don't seem to have a clear definition, because they have no problem with me making a chair and a table in my garage and then exchanging it with people. Like a communist I've talked to are like, oh yeah, that's fine, that's sure, that nobody's gonna come in and take your house from you. That would be ridiculous. But for some reason, even though I'm doing exactly the same thing I was doing before in a larger space with more people under my company, it becomes the means of production, and there isn't no clear definition of that.
I've looked at
There's no clear line of when I become the proletariat to when I become the what's it called, the semi-bourgeoisie or the petite bourgeoisie, to when I become the actual bourgeoisie, who it's okay to take my stuff, and if I don't let you have my stuff, then you can kill me. There is no clear definition of when somebody transitions from each phase. So
it's when you have multiple employees and make a profit. Then people want it. That's the cutoff line.
But, well, this is a weird thing, because this is something, because you got to understand, Karl Marx died in 1883. This was decades before computers and decades before the internet. What would he say about someone like what I'm planning on doing, who's starting their own business as a one-man operation, who is selling software, where, like, what would he say about, what's his name, the Facebook guy, Mark Zuckerberg? Mark Zuckerberg built an empire from one person. Like, he doesn't need that whole team of people and all that sort of thing. Facebook was working just fine off of a one-man operation. And had communism been implemented in the United States, it could have stayed a one-man operation, and he could still, or had socialism, sorry, not true communism, but socialism, where there was still money in the system. Mark Zuckerberg could have been a one-man operation making millions, and he wouldn't be the bourgeoisie or the petty bourgeoisie. So, like, what would Marx have to say? Like, oh, he's making millions, but he's not exploiting anybody. He's exploiting his customers. Like, it's ridiculous. Alright, and I don't want to spend the entire time talking about communism again, because I think we did that last time. Although, I would have liked somebody else with a more positive slant towards communism to give their perspective, because, I mean, I can only... even though I try to give them the benefit of the doubt sort of thing, there's only so much that I can do without being like, no, that's just fundamentally stupid, and here's the problem with that, here's the issue, the thing that you're overlooking. So I do have another clip that's that I have prepared, and it's about a 5-minute clip from the I don't know if you guys, I brought this up last time. It's the Lauren Southern, who is a very right-leaning libertarian, and I don't think she is exactly anarcho-capitalist. If she's not, she's very close to that. But Stefan Monalou was arguing for the anarcho-capitalist position, or for the pro-capitalist position, and then she was coming on there as the playing devil's advocate as the Marxist. And so I'm gonna play a little clip here if you guys don't mind, or if you guys have anything else to interject, you guys can do that now. But I don't
have any
Communism
comments.
is a failure.
Always will be. Death before communism, everybody.
Yep.
All right. So I do have this little clip. It's about 5 minutes. I'm not going to have you mute your mics. Just tell me to stop the video whenever.
All right.
And so
You know what's cheaper than one guy screwing in that leg in the chair and having an utterly meaningless existence? Some child in the third world whose parents will sell them to a factory to work for 2 cents a day. Or what's cheaper than that? A freaking machine that'll replace all of us in our work. We literally have no purpose. Do you know what happens when people have no purpose in society, Sven? That's when violence increases. That's when war happens. It is for the better of society that people have a place in this world.
All right, and so I'm going to stop that right there, because I think that is a legitimate critique that Marx brings to the table. And it is something that a lot of the people who are pro-communist, they always go to that argument. My problem with it is, yeah, that's going to happen eventually. We're not there yet. Right now, there's a huge, huge amount of time and effort between here and there. So that is my... So what they're saying is they're going to automate all of the jobs. And I'm like, yes, even if they automate all manual labor, they're not going to automate a computer programmer. They're not going to automate a teacher. They're not going to automate... anybody who uses their brain for anything. So that you may get rid of all the menial jobs. But the same thing could have been said for the data entry clerk, because that used to be a huge job. And all that was taking paper files and then putting them either into a file system or typing them up, and eventually it became entering it into a computer system. So taking things from paper and putting them into digital. But we don't have that job anymore, because now we just do things directly in a digital environment.
Yeah.
So those menial jobs, those busy work type things, those go away and get automated. But there's still plenty of work that isn't automated.
Yeah.
I mean, or that
believe
can't be automated efficiently.
Yeah.
So
I do remember
my take
seeing
on
a
this
study.
is... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I remember seeing a study about a few years ago saying by the time, like in 20, 25 years, there might be a ton of jobs that in this point in time haven't been created yet. So I think we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it. And that was all I had to really add in. You go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
And after
So-
Daniel, I'm going to say something else. So. All right.
My take on this is jobs are not the important factor here. Have you guys heard the term busy work? It's
Yes.
Yes.
useless, non-productive, but you're still working. You're doing your job. I can hire a guy to stack rocks and pay him pennies, but that does absolutely nothing for anybody. So it's not that people are working. It's what they are doing with their time. And so when a company forms, the person with the idea, the person that creates the product, the assembly line, the code, the whatever it is that people are wanting to purchase, that is the value. That is the majority. That is the entire value of the company. That idea, that process, that product that this person came up with. So that one person has put in 90% of the value. And it doesn't matter if he hires 100 people in an assembly line, and they are putting some product together. Had he not come up with that idea, this company wouldn't exist, and all 100 would have no work. So they are working for menial pay, because that is a menial job that takes no training and anybody can fit in. It's something that the mass majority of the population can just do. So once we get to the point where technology starts taking over and they get replaced by robotics, do we now owe taxes, or do we owe money to the robots because they're doing the work? Do they get part of this equal pay? They're doing the work. It's because that job is menial, so they get a small sum of the money. The value needs to stay where the value is added. And that's with the idea, that's with the product, the whatever that is being produced with this business. That's where everybody's missing out on the labor part. If you intend to do better in life, then study, become educated, and either come up with something, get creative, be a musician, artist, what have you, or learn a skill, a trade skill, something that is more valuable than just putting two, a bolt and a nut together. And then you'll start making more money.
All right.
Yeah,
And, so
I do agree with that statement. That is something I find to be actually quite thought-provoking, to be honest.
Yeah, and I believe this is a direct quote from Friedrich Hayek when he said, "You can have full employment if you draft everybody, but you will have." Oh, so no. Let's see. Let me see if I can. There's from the rap fight of the century. It's, you can draft everybody into the Navy, Army, and Fleet and have full employment and nothing to eat. So the idea that jobs are prosperity or that jobs are a good indicator of wealth is a misnomer, because, like, yeah, you can have everybody fully employed doing things that are unproductive. So what a better measure, which even though GDP is is largely used as the measure of prosperity, the issue I have with that is it's based on US dollars, which do fluctuate based on inflation and things like that. But that is a much better indicator of growth than the jobs numbers, which this is an issue that even a lot of people in our government are using. It's like, oh, but look at unemployment and look at employment and the jobs numbers are going up. And it's like, yeah, under Obama, a lot of jobs were created.
With government jobs. Government jobs create zero money.
Yeah.
They run off of taxpayer money. So that's a deficit. All government jobs are a deficit. So no matter how many people they hire, it does no good for us.
And this is something that Peter Schiff points out all the time. He says, under Obamacare, Obama was saying, oh, look at all these jobs that were created. And that's because Obamacare punishes businesses for hiring people for 40 hours a week. So if they work more than 30 hours a week, the employer has to provide them health care. So what employers were like, okay, you're limited to the numbers of hours you can work. You can only work 30. And so what people ended up doing is, rather than working just 30 because that's not enough to pay their bills, they ended up getting 2 jobs, working $20 or 20 hours per job. And they're like, hey, look, we took one job that was 40 hours, and now this person is working 2 jobs for 20 hours each. We created a job, yay! And it's like, wait, no, you took one job and you turned it into 2 different jobs just so the person wouldn't get. Yeah, it's ridiculous. There was something else I was about to say. Oh. The other point is, again, Marx died before the invention of the computer. So all of these tech industry jobs, all of this huge area of growth in the economy didn't exist when Marx wrote his theory about capital and about automation making everything obsolete. Like, the computer has made a ton of jobs obsolete, but it has made so many more jobs than it has destroyed. Like, all of these jobs that have been automated, like the telephone operator and those sorts of things, the telecommunications industry didn't die. It bloomed when we got rid of the telephone operator and we automated that sort of process. There's so many jobs in telecommunications right now that, like, one section of that may have equaled the number of jobs under just the telephone operator. Now there's a bunch of different people. Like, now there's people out there running wires from one place to another. There's people. There's so many jobs that are similar to the job of the operator that are not automated and can't really be automated. So that entire industry wouldn't exist without the automation that occurred within the early telephone industry. It's
yeah. We got some chat comments and Deus Ex Machino says, or however you want to pronounce it, says people still need to work the automation and maintain it. The jobs just shift places, and it's like replacing candles with light bulbs. The candle industry will have less jobs, but those people can get jobs making bulbs. And that analogy does make sense. It makes sense.
I'm gonna go.
All right. Well, have a good night, JJ.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you,
So
JJ.
See you guys.
the jobs just shift places,
Have a good
and
evening.
yeah, this is nothing is more apparent of a better indicator of this is when the United States was 90% agriculture before the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution made all those agricultural jobs obsolete because they became, they got machines and harvesters and things like that. And so all of these were and there was an actual period of history where all of these farmhands literally attacked the tractors and dismantled them because they were like the tractors are taking our jobs and that sort of thing. But we went from a 90% agricultural economy and job market in the United States to 2% providing enough food for all of the United States and even more than the United States
And in other
needs.
countries.
Yeah.
That's our main export is agriculture.
Yeah, it's our main.
The other industries have all died down.
Yeah, and it's like, so all of those people that used to work on farms are now moving into other sectors. So yeah, that is a good point there, Deus Ex Machina. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the video, and he still says my audio is low.
Is there a way you can secure that in place so it doesn't go down again? I'm not sure. I've never used OBS, but I've seen the amateur users.
No, I mean, I don't know where to set it at without it being too loud or too quiet. So,
I guess you're gonna have to test it live. I guess.
Just turn it up to 11. Crank
well,
it.
I'm cranking it up to 150%. Hopefully that fixes the issue. We'll
That sounds
see, though.
fine on my end.
Yeah, well, that's because you're hearing it through Hangouts.
Oh, fair enough.
So it says right now my audio is at 3.5 decibels. So we'll see if Ex Machina says anything.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go back to the clip.
And you know what's even better than just a machine doing people's jobs? It's AI. AI is significantly better than us doing any jobs at all. And you know what they say? People like Putin and Elon Musk are saying the person who creates AI first is going to be running the world. And if that's a private company, God help us. God help us, because we're not going to have any purpose at all anymore. We're going to have nothing. We're going to be entirely under control of a corporation that has the smartest, most intelligent creature, basically a god on this earth.
We're going to be entirely under the control of a machine. Is that the idea? The machine is going to be big and armed and controlled and is going to, make us stand in bread lines because it wants the bread for its own consumption? I'm not quite sure how this plays out in anything other than a paranoid science fiction fantasy scenario.
Well, all of the people that are well versed in this, like Musk and such, are saying it's a much bigger threat than even North Korea is right now. I mean, the only reason a lion that is more powerful than most of us is afraid of us is because of our intellect. That's the only reason lions are more afraid of us. And what's next? The only thing we should be afraid of is things that are more smart than us, and that's AI. And that's why all of the people that are into this, that are intelligent, that know what they're talking about, are saying AI is one of the biggest threats, especially if it gets in the hand of people who only have profit as an interest and not the common goal of the people.
So your concern is that
I'm going to stop that right there because this is something else that again, I don't want this entire stream to be about Marxism, but that's kind of what it's turning into. So the point she said there was all interested in profit. And I'm thinking, well, this is a common argument that people of the Marxist perspective bring up. And it's something that is bizarre and doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, wait, have they ever considered what profit is? Like, it seems like they're just after profit, as if profit by itself is a negative thing. When profit, in my understanding, is only positive. They're like, they're only after something good. And I'm like, what's... Because if you think about what profit is profit is having more at the end of a process than you started with. Taking $1, putting it into a machine, and getting $1.10 back. That is 10 cents of profit. Or taking 4 logs and then turning them into, 4 pieces of wood, turning them into a table and exchanging that table for 6 pieces of wood. That is a one piece of lumber profit. and people that are like, oh, well, they're just after profits. They don't care about people. And it's like, there's two ways to get profit. You either get more out than you put in, or you spend less on something, which also increases your profit. So, hey, I used to spend 5 pieces of wood to make this table, and now I've found a way to make that same table with 4 pieces of wood. That's a 1 piece of wood profit. It's still the same. I'm putting, the amount that I'm putting in is less than what I'm getting out. Yeah, so the amount that I'm putting in is less than I'm getting out, but there's 2 ways of achieving that. You either find a process that does that naturally, or you find a way to make it produce more than you put in, or you find a way to reduce the number of inputs. And people of Marxism are like, oh, they're just after profits, and you're like, yes, why is that a bad thing?
Everybody's after profits, and it doesn't even have to be money. So if you go mow the grass and it takes you 40 minutes, but you find a better path, and so every time you go out to cut your grass, you cut off just a little time because now you know the yard, you've done it, you know how your mower works, you know exactly when to bag it, how much gas to put in, and now you can cut your grass with the exact amount of gas in 30 minutes. You have profited from your time cutting your own lawn. It's not just money. Anytime you gain something, knowledge, education, a skill set, money, or a product, that is profit. It's just people want the money because they can go buy more stuff than they already have. They want the profit.
Yeah, it's like, oh, those people just want profit for themselves. Why don't they want profit for me? It's like, wait, why should they?
Yeah, it's like if I'm making money, like if I have a job and I'm working that job for money, I'm doing it usually just for me. If I'm doing it to help out with the family, that's one thing, but usually it's just because I like having a little extra money in my own pocket, and I don't see what's so bad about having money as an incentive. I also personally don't have an issue with you either work or you starve. I know that might sound a bit jaded, but
no,
I think it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement with you, but that's another argument that these people who are of the Marxist thinking always bring up, and it's like, wait a minute, don't you say that people have to work under a socialist economy or under a communist economy? Is it possible? Are you saying that right now I have to work if I want to eat and if I want to feed myself? Are you saying that under socialism and communism I don't have to do anything and I still get fed?
Yeah, I mean... The thing is, it's like, to explain why I like the notion of either working or starving, it just seems more, say the word morally here, but it seems morally correct. Like, if I don't earn something, like if I get something without earning it, I don't feel like I should truly have it. For instance, this phone, I had to get good grades to get this phone, and if I just got the phone because birthday gifts are one thing, but if I got the phone just to get a phone, if I didn't earn the phone, it just doesn't feel like I should really have it. Probably a shit analogy, but that's the one I can come up with.
An excellent analogy, and this is something that I know I've talked to my brother about this, but it's something that I picked up on a while back, and it seems like something that is lost on most people. If you think back at your childhood and all of those things, I'm looking at the stuff that's around my desk and is in my house. I don't own anything that was a gift. And yet I'm looking around at my desk, and everything that is in my room right now is all stuff that I purchased. There's nothing in my room that was even things that were of sentimental value. I can't name anything that is in my room that is like, oh, that was given to me. It's normally something that I wanted to purchase, and so I either saved up and bought it, or I knew, like, oh, this is a pretty big purchase, this is a lot of time and effort, and that's why I like to maintain the stuff that I bought. Whereas the stuff that was given to me, yeah, sure, I was excited at the moment. I can remember Christmas gifts and things like that. I was like, yes, this was awesome. And I used it for a day or so, and then it's not important anymore. But everything that I know that I worked hard for, and I'm looking around at even some of the stuff, and I was like, yeah, I worked for that. I remember what I did for that. I remember saving up for this computer screen. I remember saving up for my camera. I remember saving up for... So those things mean more to you because you remember the hard work and effort. The things that are given to you for free, you take for granted.
Yeah. For instance, this entire container of pencils, pens, and magnifying glasses and what have you, for simple schoolwork, I value those things because it gets me my education, and also I bought everything in that container with my own money, when it comes to anything, whether it's food, especially food, if it feels better to eat something that I paid for myself. For instance, if I just go to a restaurant that has things for a decent price and I buy it myself, it feels a little better to have that than have someone else pay for it for me. You know.
All right. So we're only about 2 minutes into this clip, so there's another 3 minutes of it. So I'm gonna try to get through the next little.
Well,
Yeah.
Hold on for one moment. So we kind of covered or have discussed some issues that we're seeing with socialism, communism versus capitalism, and then we were just discussing the value of work, how it makes you appreciate what you have earned and what you get back, which is why capitalism seems to cause better economic growth. People will work harder to get more back, and it is what they have earned. So that is of value to them rather than just be handed something for free, and if it's gone the next day, don't care, I'll just get it sometime later. What seems to be more what happens with socialism, you just get handed what you need. It is not yours. You didn't necessarily work that job for it. But are we kind of getting off? At some point, we are going to discuss anarcho-capitalism,
yes,
correct?
So that is once I'm done with this video. So I'm not going to play the entire clip. I would just want to get his one final point here.
Okay. All right.
So there's a pretty good point.
Be a central agency that would have direct control over the means of production. In other words, you have a science fiction fantasy fear of something that continually manifests itself in actual real communist countries. You know, I'll take the historical 94 million graves as a warning over the future Skynet death of humanity, Borg brain of infinite intelligence by computers. So
right, and let's just pretend capitalism has no crimes. Let's just pretend all of the slave labor, all of the dead people, all of the
All right, so I'm going to stop it there because she does go into talking about slavery, because this is another argument that a bunch of people present against Marxist against capitalist. But that's where I'm going to end that. So I'm not going to get into the whole slavery thing because, like my brother was saying, we do need to get onto the whole anarcho-capitalism versus either regular capitalism or a mixed economy or whatever. But the point I wanted to emphasize there that he made is a lot of these people, they're like, oh, we should be afraid of all of these other systems because, oh, they could oppress people or there could be, and he's like, yes, so there might be a downside to what we're currently doing with capitalism, but that's still better than everything that has occurred under these socialist and these communist endeavors. So I'd rather take, the unknown over the known. It's like, if it's a known negative, I'd rather take the unknown. Could be good, could be bad.
Yeah, a quick question, because I feel like this is one I've been thinking about for a bit. How would you address the socialist or communist classic of that's not true communism or socialism because it was in a stateless society or the means of production weren't owned by the workers?
Every attempt to get to true communism has turned into that. That is the problem. So they can make all the claims as that wasn't true communism, and I will accept that that isn't true communism. That isn't the ideal. The problem is every time that they've tried to get to that ideal, it has just been paved with dead bodies. They never... It's like saying, if I keep going north, I'll get to the North Pole, and every time you start getting to the North Pole, you start seeing, penguins, and you're like, wait, penguins are in the South Pole. Are you guys sure we're going the right way? It's like... That is So that is the problem. Is they say here's the destination, and every time they start making their way towards that destination, things get further and further away from what their ideal is, and you're like, we're going the wrong way, guys. If we're getting further away from what we want, we're going the wrong way.
Yeah. I guess when I first heard of anarcho-capitalism, I'd have to say was... Because I'd heard of capitalism a couple months beforehand. I think it was around March or April of this year I actually started hearing about anarchism and anarcho-capitalism. And I'm still quite new to the whole anarcho-capitalism thing. I've heard people say AnCaps, they don't want to get rid of the military or the police or the courts. They want to privatize the courts, and things like that. And my general, I guess, a question would be as to why would one want to privatize the courts, the military, things like that.
Well, it comes from the
And police
general
force.
general understanding that competition makes everything better. Right now, there is only one military for the United States. There is only one judicial system for the United States. It has different tiers as far as, like the local justice system, and on and up until the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court gets the final say-so. There is nobody else that the Supreme Court is competing with. There's competition within the Supreme Court because how many justices? It's
9.
Nine justices.
9 justices.
Yeah. So there's 9 justices, and so each of those justices may compete with each other as far as their verdicts and that sort of thing. But once the Supreme Court makes a decision, that's as high as it goes. There's no other court that people can turn to, and which has led to a lot of problems. Like a big thing that is is highly controversial right now is Roe versus Wade, which was decided by the Supreme Court. And people who don't agree with that decision, they have no choice but to abide by that. They're like, okay, where else are you going to go? If you don't like a decision that was made, if you don't like a business practice, if you don't like that the United States is, if you don't like the United States war effort, what other option do you have? None. You don't have a choice between what they're doing that you disagree with and what you would prefer.
That
Yeah.
that sounds a bit odd to me, at least on judicial issues. So the way I'm kind of interpreting it, if I go out and some chick comes up and just starts harassing me and calling me or whatever, and I backhand her. I'm being a misogynistic, pig guy, whatever. I backhand her because I'm just PO'd at what she's saying about me and to me, and I don't even know her. So that goes to court for assault. I don't like that judge's decision. Can I go to some other private court and be like, look, bitch was asking for it. You understand this, right? Yeah, that's right. Because he's more on male side of things and, don't take crap from anybody. So he's cool with it. This other court's not. Do I go to jail for assaulting a woman or no because this other judge? How does that work?
The way that would work is both you and the victim, so the defendant and the plaintiff, or is it plaintiff?
Plaintiff.
Hypothetical.
Yeah. So the plaintiff
don't
and
catch
defendant would have to agree to the same court system. So the original decision was made by some court, and it ruled in her favor.
That's extremely manipulable. If I know courts are more likely to rule in favor of a man, I'm going to say that, and I'm not going to agree to the other
and
court.
then she won't.
It's like right now, courts are predominantly pro-woman when it comes to divorce, and the male typically pays child support. If I can find another court system that reverses that, I'm going over there.
Yeah. Okay,
sure.
here's the thing: is she has to agree to.
Though.
She would have to agree to that decision too, because there's nothing stopping her from going to another court and being like, okay, well.
So what if neither of us can agree on where to go to these private entities?
See, if neither of you can agree on where to go,
then what good is the police force? Because they have nothing to enforce. They don't know what to enforce at that point because nothing's been decided. Did I commit a crime, or is it just a minor offense? And people say, "Hey, cut it out," but being a douche.
So similar to right now, where they've got the hierarchical structure. The original arbiter is because that's what it's called is arbitration when you have a judge that is outside of the regular U.S. court system. It's called arbitration. So you go to the original arbiter. You don't like his decision. You contest by going over to your own firm, and your own firm sides with you, and then she goes to her firm, and they side with her. Well, those firms, because they can't come to an agreement, would have to go to a higher tier of court. So those two arbiters would go to a justice that they agree on, and they would both have to decide, okay, we both disagree with each other's decision, but we're both going to rely on this person's judgment because we both trust that other arbiter's judgment. So we're going to bring our entire situation to him, and we agree before the trial occurs that we're going to accept whatever decision they decide, and that's what will be applied to our clients. So that's the only way that could occur.
Now,
and this
how
sort of
does that
thing
differ from we have the right to a jury of our peers, which is just a random group of people that have no say,
Well,
they don't care. It's
yeah.
your job to convince them that you are the correct one. So doesn't that kind of open it up that it's not necessarily a judicial system focused in this one area?
There's nothing saying that you can't have a trial by jury. So if that's the situation, but the thing is, you would have to come to an agreement that you will abide by the court's decision. So that there has to be that established before the trial actually occurs. So both parties
like
have
Judge
to.
Judy.
Yeah, you have to say, you know what?
Yeah.
I think I'm in the right. They think they're in the right. We're taking this before a jury of
Isn't
our
that
peers.
kind of a privatized civil court, anyways?
Yes, it is because right now the civil court is more fair than the criminal court in a lot of situations. Firstly, in a criminal or civil court, the person who is wronged actually gets compensation or actually gets some kind of remunerations for how they were wronged. In the criminal court, nothing. You get absolutely nothing. As someone who has been on both sides of the criminal court,
you lose. Good day, sir.
Yeah, as someone who's been on both sides of the criminal court, I lost both times, and I'm like, wait. So when I was the victim, I lost my property. I had to take time and energy to file a police report, file all the items that were stolen from me. And when they actually found the guy or whatever, I had to present a written statement testifying that, hey, this is the guy who stole my stuff based on this evidence. I didn't actually go to court because I couldn't make it to court, but because I was actually driving up for my job here when I was doing that, when the trial was going on. But after everything was said and done, it took about 1.5 years for the guy to come to justice, and he's now in jail for I think 10+ years because it was grand larceny because he stole over $5,000 worth of stuff. You know how much of that stuff I got back? Zero. Not even the stuff they kept in evidence. Not even. I've contacted the police station and be like, hey, where's the stuff that you guys did recover that you used to criminalize? It's gone. Like, I don't know where it is. The stuff that they recovered it's not in the evidence locker. It's not. The trial was over, and it's out of the system. They don't know where it is. There's nothing I can do. So $5,000 worth of my stuff was stolen, and the court system did nothing. Now my insurance covered a portion of it because I was paying for renter's insurance, but the criminal court system did nothing for me, and actually it cost me more because I'm paying taxes to keep that guy in jail. So the other side, when I was on the receiving end, I thought I was in the right. The court decided I was in the wrong, and I ended up paying money. So I'm like, okay, so in one case, I lost my stuff. I didn't get anything back for it, for all the time and energy I had to put into getting this guy to justice. And in the other case, I just ended up paying money that the court didn't care. The court didn't care whether I was guilty or not. They're like, whatever. If you're guilty, we don't care. If you're innocent, we don't care. And talking to other people, like other lawyers and all that sort of thing, so about the situation, they were like, the court just wants to make a buck. They don't care about you. This is a stupid situation. This is something that should have never gone to court, but since it's gone to court, they're looking to make some of their money back. And
so I think what could probably fix a lot of this is having reviews of legal precedent, because I think that has skewed our court system way off in the la-la land.
Yes.
They have to agree with precedent. Whether or not it's common sense in that particular case, some years ago, some bozo convinced this judge that this is the correct way it should be judged, and then, henceforth, this is not how it's done. So that's why a lot of judges just don't care anymore. They're just in there, they read this, it matches this precedent, connect the dots, get out of my court, you owe this fine. They don't care about your story or your circumstance, which was the whole purpose of having a trial by your peers.
Yes.
Having a jury. So they could decide based off of what you're saying and your circumstance. So I think if we go back to that route, which is what it was supposed to be when it started, it'd be a bit more, we'd have more justice. We'd have more of a proper verdict on a lot of these cases that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
But as far as that relates to anarcho-capitalism, that's like a tiny portion of it. So just kind of a reminder, don't get stuck too much on that part.
Yeah. So
But-
so
Yeah,
while
I do
there
agree with that point.
while it could be fixed within a state society, I don't think it's ultimately. So the justification for the anarcho-capitalist system is that it is a more moral system than the state. But let me just, while I'm thinking about this, so in my case, with those particular, for both of those instances where I had to deal with the criminal system, neither of those cases was open to a jury trial, which I thought was the case, was that any trial you bring before the court has to be, you have to have the option for a jury trial, but apparently that's not the case. If it is a minor offense or something like that, or if it's something where it's, like, even though the charge that was placed against me, I was looking at potentially seeing 6 to 9 months in jail, which I don't understand, and I still, to the life of me, when I explain the situation to other people, it's like, wait, seriously? Are you joking me? That's what we're wasting our court system dollar on? Yeah, so
5 minutes, I'm out in the corner. Done
even
deal.
when facing 6 months or 9 months in jail, I couldn't appeal to a jury of my peers, because I know if I brought it before a jury of my peers, they'd be like, dude, why are you guys wasting our time with this trial? This guy, we don't care. Let this guy go. Stop wasting his time. But because I had to go through one judge and I could not switch it to any other judge, I could not appeal it to any other judge.
I don't think that's actually legal.
I don't know.
Due process. It wasn't due process not even being considered here. I'm not going to ask what your charge was, but like were you charged like a misdemeanor or a felony?
Yeah, it was a misdemeanor. So the situation was I punched my brother in the forehead. Not the brother I'm streaming with, a different brother. Single solitary punch. Nobody went to the hospital. Nothing happened. Like there was a slight pink mark on his forehead, and my knuckles were bruised. That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
It was like a family tiff.
Yeah, it was a family scuffle, and the courts got involved because it was technically battery.
Battery.
They started off saying it was domestic assault. That's the original charge. They tried to, and I was like, wait, domestic assault? Are you saying? Yeah, because had I been convicted of that, I wouldn't be able to own a firearm.
That is major bullshit, my friend.
For a single solitary punch. And that's why when I explained it to lawyers, when I explained it to other people, they're like, wait, seriously? So I ended up paying over $1,000 for that. For one punch in my adult life.
That's major bullshit.
That's bullshit. Wow.
It's like, and I have the documentation for it, and I have all the, like, so if anybody's like, oh, no, he's just trying to downplay it. No, that's what happened. Like, even... So my brother, the one I punched, came to court with me and was going to testify on my behalf because he's like, dude, I don't know what happened, but the court system is overstepping their bounds. They would not even hear him. They actually told me that having him in the courtroom with me could be considered tampering with a witness. That's what my lawyer told me. My lawyer, who's supposed to be on my side, I'm like, okay, my brother's here, he's going to explain the situation, he is testifying on my behalf. She would not talk to him. She would not listen to me. She actually reported me to the courts for psychiatric evaluation. I'm not making this up. I don't understand. This is the person who is supposed to be defending me against the system. And I'm like, this is overblown. And she's like, oh no, like everything she was telling me was like, oh, you're in the wrong. You just need to pay up for this. And I'm like, you're supposed to be on my side. You're supposed to be helping me.
The guy I hit is my brother, and he's not asking him to pay up.
Yeah. It's like he's the person who is technically the victim, and he says there's no crime here. What is going on?
It's just you guys need to calm down.
Doesn't it sound like due process is being... I'm not sure if you could call it a due process violation, but...
I don't know. I paid the $1,000, and then I'm glad it's no longer on my record.
That's what the lawyers are supposed to be for, to tell us if this is proper due process and whether everything was done right. But it sounds like lawyers' hands are tied by whatever garbage.
So I don't want to get too distracted by the court system, because that's
one thing. But how would anarcho-capitalism have? If we went to a court in AnCaptain, how would your case have been handled? Or would there even be a case against you in AnCaptain?
If there's no crime, there's no court. So if my brother was like, oh, yeah, you know what, don't even worry about it, the court system is like, okay, whatever.
And both parties said, hey, don't worry, nothing happened here.
Yeah. So
Nothing goes
yeah.
forward, nobody cares.
the anarcho-capitalist court system would work like my brother was saying, just like the civil courts right now. Like, hey,
Okay.
you have two people who have a disagreement. They go to the court system. Court system either, there's always a system of appeals. You'll always be able to. So that's the thing. So even though I said there would be a higher court, there is no top court because you can always go to any other court. So it's not like hey, there's the Supreme Court, and once they make a final decision, if you wish to appeal, you can shop it around to any other court system that will hear your case. And it's only once, like, hey, there's no other court system to, like, dude, just accept the decision. If no other courts are willing to hear your case and willing to say, hey, maybe that other court ruled wrong. If they're all like, you know what, this looks pretty cut and dry to me, that's the only time where you cannot appeal your decision, is if there's nobody else to appeal to.
Yeah.
So what if you got a murder, like a gang person stabbed another guy downtown? He goes to court for manslaughter or first-degree murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that second degree? Yeah, first-degree murder.
No, that'd be first-degree murder.
But he doesn't like the judgment, so he starts appealing to all these other courts.
Yeah.
It's very clear as day he should just go to jail.
Yeah. So
how long is it going to take for all these appeals and him not going anywhere?
So for a situation like that, he would still go to jail and appeal the decision while in jail, because that is what we currently do with our criminal system. So it's not so that is it. Like, we don't want our criminal people like, hey, I raped somebody and I'm going to appeal for 17 years. It's not like they get to stay out on the streets. While they're in the appeals process, they are stuck in jail.
Yeah, like that's how it is currently with our current system. If I'm on death row for a crime, for example, I'm going to remain on death row while my appeal is processing, and in certain cases, you can be out on appellate bond. But I think that has to be where your case has been overturned and you're awaiting a resentence. I think a retrial, not resentencing.
No, that has to be if the court agrees that you can be let out on bail or bond.
Yeah, if they agree.
So if the court is like, you know what, this person is probably a hazard to people around him, that's what I've ruled. So no, you don't get bail. And then for the appeals, the court system would have to make the same kind of, like, the appeal could be like, you know what, we're pretty sure this guy did the crime, but we are willing to make the option for him to be out on bail and that sort of thing. So that would be the court's decision when they're making their verdict. That is, or when they're first hearing the trial is where they set that sort of thing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I could see a lot of problems with that. It just reminds me of kids asking for stuff. Kid goes up to his mom, hey, can I have a piece of candy? No, we're about to have dinner. Runs up to his dad, can I have a piece of candy? Sure, here you go. What happens?
Well, that's the thing, is in order for the courts to understand, they would have to see the previous trial. Whereas the reason the kid gets away with that sort of thing is the dad doesn't know that he had already appealed to the mom. But
it doesn't have to tell the previous trial if the second court system decides, hey, you know what? It looks like some evidence wasn't properly examined, or there was some aspects of this case that we noticed watching this that they didn't consider in the first one, so we're going to say not guilty on this one.
That happens right now in our current system. That is what appeal lawyers do. They go and like, hey, we found some evidence, or we think you got treated unfairly in that trial, and we're going to try to help you get an appeal with a different. The problem is if your case ever gets to the Supreme Court and they make a decision, appeal lawyers are going to be like, well, we think you're innocent, but where are we going to appeal to? So that, but usually things that go all the way up to the Supreme Court are matters of national importance, not a murder trial. So usually with a murder trial, there is some other court to appeal to.
There's some cases where they might actually go to the Supreme Court. I've heard of a few death row cases, for example, that have gone all the way to the Supreme Court.
And usually because the decision had an effect on matters of law or clarifying something like that. So it wasn't just because the appeals had gone
a murder
that
had
far.
occurred.
It's because there was something significant about that case that needed to be decided. All right, so let's hop off of court.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not legal jargon.
Right.
What about the military or the police force?
Anarcho-capitalism. Or just what's the basic premise of anarcho-capitalism?
Okay, yeah, so that's something.
I don't think that was ever.
Okay, so the main foundation, I'm sure you've heard of this, and anytime anybody talks about anarcho-capitalism, they will bring up the non-aggression principle. And this is something that apparently a lot of people, it seems pretty simple and cut and dry to me, but a lot of people are confused about this. So the non-aggression principle says that you own yourself. And because you own yourself, other people cannot take actions against you without your permission. right? That seems pretty cut and dry, right?
Yes.
So since you own yourself, other people can't act against you without your permission. Any act that is against you without your permission is what we call aggression. Now, some people look at this and be like, oh, okay, well, so you can't, if somebody's going to rape you, you can't do anything to stop them because that would be initiating aggression. It's like, wait a minute, no. The other person is trying to take an action that violates
against
your property rights. When somebody does that, you do have the right to defend yourself because you have the right to own your own person. So if somebody's trying to rape you, you have every right to defend your right not to be raped. So that is how it works. A lot of people, when they hear about non-aggression principle, they're like, oh, there's a bunch of peaceniks, you can't ever lift it. No, it's not a completely pacifist. It's not a true pacifist. It's a pacifist except in defense. It has to be defense for yourself or others. And actually...
that sounds like what we already have in place.
No, so actually, if you're talking about self-defense, you cannot use self-defense in defense of others, which is something I think is kind of bizarre. Like, this is something, if you are law enforcement, you can. If you are a private citizen, that's going to go to court, and you just have to hope that the court rules in your favor.
So if someone was going to attack my daughter, and I do something back to him to protect her, I'm the criminal.
You're going to have to prove that in court. There is, a self-defense case will usually they will just, oh, that was in self-defense, we lined out the case, okay. They will either dismiss that at court, or maybe it'll see court to prove that you had self-defense. In a defense of others, you're going to have to prove that in the same way it would be like a civil case. It is not a cut and dry. There is, as far as I know, there is no precedence for that.
What we have in place sounds similar to what you were saying about the non-aggression principle. It sounds like we just need a better system that encompasses
here's the problem.
Interactions between people.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the problem. How does the drug war affect the non-aggression principle? Like, how does buying and selling drugs and using drugs violate the non-aggression principle? See, that's a problem, because that is a law enforced by our government that has nothing that can be a completely victimless crime. If you try and sell drugs
to my kids because you're hanging around a middle school, I will kill you. That's how that works.
Wait, what was that?
I said, if you're a druggie and you're trying to sell drugs at a middle school where my kids are going, I'm going to kill you.
Oh. Why not?
So,
that's kind of an understandable position to be in.
Otherwise, if you're a grown-up, go mess yourself up. Don't care.
Well, here's the other part of that, is that children would be the property of their parents until they are of the age where they can take full responsibility for themselves. So that is kind of that's going to be kind of a given, because you can only own yourself if you have the full faculties to make decisions for yourself.
I can see a counterpoint to that still, because years ago, 100, 200 years ago, of age used to be like 12, and they're like, well, they hit puberty. Nope, now it's 16. Nope, now it's 18. Now everyone's kind of wondering if 18 is even old enough, because we have some dumbasses getting out of high school, can't even make a sandwich or do laundry, and
okay, and I think we've had a discussion on this, and I would disagree with you. Or disagree that 18 is what makes 18 the ideal age. I think 12 and 13 is perfectly fine. Because what happened back in the day is when somebody turned 12 or 13, they had to prove themselves capable of being self-sufficient. And I know you've there's this I want to bring up the Dark Tower, although that's a work of fiction. That's the kind of thing that happened in a lot of cultures. So in the Dark Tower, Roland, in order to prove his manhood, has to best his master in combat, and he does that at age 11. So at age 11, he's considered a man, and what does he do right away? He goes to a whorehouse. But in a lot of cultures, that's what happened. There was a rite of passage to become an adult. In the Native American tribes, there was you had to go out on a hunt on your own, and if when you came back with your trophy, they accepted you as a man of the tribe, and you were treated just the same as every other adult. And that could happen at age 9. That could happen at it may take until you're 16 before you actually got your first hunt by yourself. So the age was no longer an issue. It was the prove yourself to be an independent individual. Prove that you can provide for yourself, and then you are accepted as a member of the tribe. Right now, it's just hey, you survived to 18. Guess what? You're an adult. We're going to treat you as if you have some kind of responsibility. To me, that is completely out of your mind bananas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I do believe I do actually quite pretty much agree with what HUMANE just said there. I think that if you're going to make the determination that you have to prove it, I don't buy this whole, oh, I'm a man because I made it to 18. I think I do agree that it should take more than that to just...
Well, here's another thing, is there are people with mental retardation who even at the age of 30-something are not considered independent adults, and they have to prove that they can live on their own. So it seems kind of backwards that you have to be declared mentally retarded in order for society to be like, oh, can this person prove themselves or not? And yet there's so many people who are, I would say, while they're not testably mentally retarded, these are the people who go out on break.com and smash fluorescent bulbs on their nutsack, and you're like, I don't care if you're 18, there's something wrong with your brain. You should not be considered an adult the same way that I am.
I honestly, I disagree with what?
All right.
He was.
I know it's just about the. You said like 8. I mean, I just don't think.
18 seems to be a completely. It's an
I'm
arbitrary
talking about, like,
number.
sexual contact, though. I mean, I just don't feel like adults should be screwing, 10, 12-year-old. I just.
No. See, that's. Well, if the 10 and 12-year-old proves themselves to be as competent as another adult.
I know, but it's a 12-year. It's a kid. I mean, technically.
Yeah, well, back in the day, societies had no problem with that. I don't know when that stopped. I don't know when it was set to a specific.
It just bothers
amount
me.
Of time.
I think it was based on if the kid is mature enough to be able to consent to a sexual relationship. I think we actually did touch up upon this in a last. Fuck. in a prior stream on my channel.
All right, revoke his citizenship status. He's no longer an adult. Oh, actually, you're not an adult. You are what, 16 or something like that?
Yeah, I actually, my birthday was like 2 weeks ago, so.
Oh, so you're not even an adult. We don't get a say in this conversation. Why are we even listening to you? Well, see, that's the thing. Is if somebody can have okay. Here's a weird Alexander the Great was king at age 12. He was conquering the world by age 15. And you're like, oh, well, he's a child. How dare somebody this is a weird mentality. Have humans, as far as our development, have we slowed down in how we develop?
Yes.
Physically?
Yes.
Or is it just because is it a societal?
No, physically, no.
No, I mean,
yes.
Maybe at 16. I don't have a problem with that.
No. If you go through the list of the ages at which people had their breakthrough successes, like a bunch of people in history, like all of these great figures as to when they had their significant accomplishments, they're the majority of them were in their early teens. Like Joan of Arc was 14. Like 14 when she's leading an army into war. And she gets burnt at the stake. I think she may have been 15 when she was burnt at the stake. Joan of Arc, like the name that this was a teenager. I don't even know if she was fully developed sexually. Like, probably not. That's why she was able to hide in armor, and people were like, oh, they didn't realize she was a woman until way after the fact. Yeah. It's probably because she wasn't fully developed. It's like Mulan, the same basic story. Like, how are you gonna say, like, if she's a double D, and you're like, wait a minute, this man's a little fatter. She probably was prepubescent when she started, and that's why people are like, oh yeah, it's a dude.
Did you just assume her gender?
There's a ton of different factors that would equate into that. So, if you look at average life expectancy back then, how long were people living? 30? 40?
I know. That's why the majority of people did their stuff when they were in their teens.
15 is almost a quarter of their life, or could almost be half their life.
So in the last... So in 2,000 years, you're saying our biological development has slowed down because our life expectancy has increased?
No, back then you could learn everything you need to by the time you're 8. You could learn whatever trade it is. You could learn how to wield a sword. You could learn how to build a house. Because it was all simple. Nowadays, you can't even start to put up a framework of a house without having multiple permits, contractors, a ton of money behind you, a bank loan, and yada, yada, yada. So if you move out of your parents' house at the age of 14, where are you going to live? You're going to live on the street.
I don't know. Okay,
or
so
somebody else's house.
Yeah, so
you can't take care of yourself.
So here's
so until you can take care of yourself.
Why have things become so complicated? Why can't
because there's complicated stuff here.
No. Why can't you build your own house nowadays? What's stopping you from building your own house and your own structure that you can live in?
Government regulations.
Exactly the problem that anarcho-capitalists are looking at. They're like, okay, things have become so complicated because there's all of these government regulations in place. Now, most of them maybe for good causes, as in like, hey, you're building the structure that somebody else is going to live in, and so you have to make sure that it's not going to set fire, or it's not going to catch on fire, it's not going to collapse. It's not
you don't want to wire your own house,
try
and get insurance. You burn yourself, and now the insurance company has to pay out because you don't know how to do electrical work.
Yeah, but
whose fault is that? It's your fault.
Okay, but those standards are applied to every house built. If you were to go out on unopen, like an open field, like 15 acres, and place a house in the middle of it, it still has to meet all of the standards that are set for the houses that are in the cities right next to each other. That is a problem. Like there's maybe for farm homesteads there might be waivers and exceptions and things along those lines, but for the most part, if you're going to build a house, it has to, and you're going to get power run to it, and you're going to get water run to it. It has to pass all the same inspections as a house that is stacked, or as houses that are stacked on top of each other. It's a one-size-fits-all, and that is the main problem that anarcho-capitalists have with government. This is the way things are done, and they're like, oh, well, this is a situation where clearly it would be stupid to apply that rule. They're like, nope, still apply that rule. It is very difficult to get a waiver for those exceptions where you're like, okay, clearly this house out in the middle of nowhere doesn't make sense for it to have to follow all of these structural guidelines.
Who would make sure or mandate that we have specific guidelines for overpopulated areas? Condos, skyscrapers, buildings. Okay. I'm not going to have a bunch of...
That depends on who owns it.
A bunch of guys who are just fiddling around and saying, I'd like to try and build a skyscraper and have it collapse on the rest of the city and kill thousands.
Okay, well, that depends on who owns it.
So... the guy that's building it.
Yeah. So
I'm a 16-year-old. So my dad's pretty rich from his capitalist business, and he's giving me a bunch of money, so I'm going to go buy a bunch of steel beams, hire a crew, and say, yeah, I just want a couple beams here. Okay, so let's add some floors. Okay, and then if that building collapses, whose fault is that?
The owners.
That is the owner who's building it, but you're seriously saying that construction workers will look at some kid who's 16 and look at his plans for a structure and be like, yeah, that seems legit. We've been doing this for years. We've been building structures that have stayed because we rely on our reputation. Let's follow the guidance. Let's follow the guidance of this 16-year-old who has no experience in this sort of thing. And if this building collapses, that looks bad on us. You're saying that these construction workers would enter into this contract and build this place and be like, yeah, hopefully that holds up.
If they're getting paid enough, you betcha.
If they're getting paid
if they're not liable for it.
They better be getting paid enough to last the rest of their lives where they don't have to work anymore. Because if they need another job after this one, they're not going to get it. Because people are like, wait a minute, you were the guy who worked on that building that collapsed. You're an idiot. I don't want to deal with you.
This is an extreme example, so I'm not going to argue on it too much, but I'm saying who regulates that?
Reputation regulates the majority of interactions between people, even nowadays. And this is something
I agree with you there.
Yeah. This is something when people are like, oh, well, how are you going to stop these corporations? Look at how many corporations have been brought to their knees by public demands. You know how many companies have to put this sticker label, no BHP, or is it BHA? I forget which acronym of that, the plastic stuff. Let me...
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So all of these companies, you know what happened? People started boycotting companies that were using plastic if they didn't have that sticker on there, if they didn't say they didn't use it. Even though that particular chemical has not been associated with any kind of death, there was a report that came out saying, oh, it leads to increases in some kind of medical condition. And customers started demanding that companies stop using that. Same thing with Gatorade when they were using what was it vegetable what was the name of it?
Brominated vegetable oil.
Brominated vegetable oil. Gatorade, one of the largest soft drink manufacturers in the country, they had to completely change their formula based on consumer demands because people
also consumers share demanded in their Mountain Dew. That's one of the top selling sodas in the world, and it
still has brominated vegetable oil. Yeah,
they were supposed to get rid of that years ago. Nope.
Yeah.
Also, you can also see it's kind of happening with. I'm not saying the NFL has been brought to their knees, but when their ratings are going down. Just look what's going on there.
Literally brought to their knees.
Not your.
Ratings wise,
but
not in the sense of that they're changing anything. But
no, people are leaving in droves. They're losing money. The NFL is their viewership is way down. Yes.
ESPN is losing millions. They fired hundreds of people within just the last 2 years.
Yeah. Because people don't want it anymore. People are voting with their dollars. So this is okay. S-Man, I'll let you go, and then I want to kind of steer in another direction here.
Yeah. One anarcho-capitalist argument that actually made a lot of sense was the whole complaint over 80,000 pages of regulations. That one in particular, when it was being explained, 80,000 pages, how many people you need to go through that many pages, it actually made a lot of sense, and that was a point I actually could very much agree with anarcho-capitalists on.
Yeah.
You know.
So that is a huge area in that. So the argument against that is not all of the pages apply to every industry, but there are still industries that have a person whose job it is to go through as much of that as possible and find all the regulations that do apply to their business and make sure that their business is in compliance with that. That's why. Do you know which is the largest section or what the largest growth within corporations is? It's in the HR department. So the HR departments in a lot of these large corporations, a lot of these medium-sized corporations, the HR department is larger than the entire rest of the organization, because the HR department has to deal with all of these sorts of things. These, it's human resources, and they're dealing with regulations and making sure the company is following all of that, making sure their hiring practices are in good condition, making sure that the people working for the company are in line with everything. And it's ridiculous to have management, which is essentially what HR is, more important and more prominent than the actual business itself. And this is killing this is killing local and small businesses. Middle-sized businesses are suffering under this situation. Large businesses, it's not as much of a factor because their HR departments are a smaller portion of their business. The HR department is maybe like a quarter of the business, or depending on if it's a multinational corporation, the HR department is like a tenth or less than 10% of the organization. But the smaller the company is, that HR department still has to stay about the same size, and it's ridiculous because they have to make sure it stays in line.
I still think there is some stuff that would have to be regulated. So let's say I wanted to start my own personal spirits business, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to make some nice vodka, maybe try my hand at some whiskey. I build a makeshift distillery in my basement, and I blow myself up, my house up, catch my neighbor's house on fire, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm dead. It's not like I'm going to have to pay back anything.
Okay.
And some guy up the street can go and do it again. Because there's no regulation if it's anarcho-capitalist. There are certain safety things I can see that people would have to decide, you can't do this here. Okay. You want to go blow yourself up out on your 15 acres? Fine. You come in here, no. You can't build a skyscraper because you don't know what you're doing. You can't build a distillery. You can't handle hazardous chemicals and build batteries or build equipment like this that could possibly explode or send shrapnel over the city. You can't do that here. There has to be something to protect other people, not just your dumb mistakes.
Are you familiar with an HOA? Homeowners Association. Right?
Homeowners Association.
Yeah. So Homeowners Association, they have specific rules for a neighborhood. The same thing could be applied in an anarcho-capitalist society, where all of these people, like, hey, if you're going to live in this neighborhood, you have to abide by these neighborhood rules. And so when it comes to building a brewery in your basement, that would be against the rules of the HOA. And So even though you say you decided to violate the rules of the HOA, there would be some kind of so even if
Probably
you
a
kill
policy. If you violate it, you have to move out. You're
yeah,
gone.
if you were caught doing that sort of thing, building a brewery in your basement, yeah, of course they're gonna have you kick out. Like HOAs will kick you out if you have somebody parked in the grass in front of your house for too long. It's like, oh, but he's just a temporary guest. Oh, but they're parked on the grass. That's a violation of HOA, and they'll take you to court and get you kicked out of your property. Or if your grass is growing too long, they'll file a complaint and that sort of thing. So
don't they have people maintain that for you? I don't know. I've never lived in an HOA place.
In my HOA,
so
yes.
HOA would still be a governing entity.
Yes.
It sounds
so
like
that is
anarcho-capitalist is just massive federal government.
No,
it needs to be broken down into your area.
Yes, it is a more
you guys
localized.
Regulate yourselves.
Okay, so do you agree that the state's rights are more important than the federal government's rights?
In practice nowadays, they are not, but they are supposed to be, and yes, they should be, by far.
So by that same logic, would it make more sense for the counties within a state to have more of a say on the people within their counties than the state has to say on it?
Yes.
Okay. And then going down to the city, would it make more sense for the city rules to overrule the county rules?
Yes, but how far down does that go?
Yeah.
Can my own personal home rules override everybody's?
I would say yes. So I would say it keeps going down and keeps going down until you get to the individual level or the smallest organization. So if you're talking about in the situation of an HOA type thing, the HOA technically owns the entire neighborhood. And people are renting, or at least in my neighborhood, while I own my house, if I violate the rules of the HOA, I could lose my house to the HOA. That is a possibility because they claim ownership over the entire neighborhood, and I agreed to that when I purchased the house in there. I agreed to abide by the rules of the HOA. So
basically, we only need a legal system and a policing force to enforce contracts.
Yes.
You violate these contracts, whatever the repercussions are or what was stipulated in that contract, that's what they're there to enforce.
Yes. And so while your case of the guy who's making
that sounds like a mafia a little bit, just...
Well, if you look back at history, the original gangs, like if you're talking about gangs, so this was before the creation of the police force. If you're looking at the gangs in New York and all that sort of thing, that's what I think you're kind of alluding to as far as mafia turf wars and that sort of thing.
Or an HOA where you move into my neighborhood, you pay a protection fee. You don't pay a protection fee, it can guarantee your business will stay in business.
Yeah, or you just can't.
That's how this area works.
I have no problem
with it because they're on the payroll or they don't want to get shot.
Okay. So I have no problem with that. The big difference is HOAs would not be trying to take over other HOAs' territory because they're like, well, if they did,
you're
they
fine
would do
with
it.
paying a protection fee so the HOA doesn't come burn your house down.
No, so why would they come burn your house down?
That's what the mafia does.
Well, that's what the mafia would do, but the HOA, that doesn't make any sense for them to burn your house down.
They were like an HOA. They own this territory. They made the laws. They made the rules.
Okay, so the mafia did not have a contract, right? The
when
HOA
you
would
have a
neighborhood,
contract. Sure. When you move into their neighborhood, you're in their contract. I'm saying these are the type of things that spring up.
No. Okay, in order to purchase the place in the begin with, in order to move into the neighborhood, you would have to sign a contract. Otherwise, you can't own that property. So when you're moving into a mafia-controlled neighborhood, there is no contract because the mafia operates outside of contracts. They were operating outside of the state. So in this situation, while an anarcho-capitalist society could be viewed as a state, the issue is all of the contracts and organizations have to be entered into voluntarily. So the only way you can get into that situation where you own a property inside of an HOA is if you agreed to the terms of the HOA when you moved in.
But if there is now a privatized police force, privatized military, then people like that who are wanting to own these areas can do whatever they want. If they want to push drugs into their neighborhood
can they
because
do
people
whatever
are
they
buying
want?
it.
Wait, how can they
Because
do
they
whatever
can buy their own private police force. Because everything's now privatized.
Yes. And then,
so then
having
who's going to
that
stand up
police
against their
force,
police
having
force?
that police force invade and take over your house is a violation of the contract you originally signed. So you can take that to some other. So here's the thing that I don't understand is people. Okay, people want an organized society. That's why we have a society to begin with. Why would people suddenly stop
Correct.
wanting an organized society?
It's not that people stop wanting an organized society. Is that there will always be bad people who use and take power when they shouldn't, and it shouldn't be lawful.
Okay.
But they have an opportunity, they seize it, and they take control. That's how we get tyrants, dictators, the old monarchs and kings that just ran the countries into the ground. It just happens. So without a structured enforcement that says you can't do this, and it's backed by something, what's to keep that from popping up here and there? Guy gets a little bit of money.
Which group is larger? Which group is larger? The group that wants to do things that harm other people, or the group that wants to do things that help other people?
Which group is more violent and capable of ending lives?
Well, I say they're both equally capable of it. I mean, if you, like you said, hey, if you're trying to sell drugs to my children, I'm gonna kill you, right? So are you somebody who wants law and order, or are you somebody who wants to kill people and violently? So the issue is, if you got rid of... Yeah, so, yeah, I'm saying, are you the typical person, or are you the atypical person? Would you consider yourself...
I would want to protect my family. I don't want to kill anyone.
Do you think that is more than likely the opinion of most other parents?
Sure.
Well, wait, if someone were to go molest their child, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure any person would go fucking kill that person who molested your kid.
And here's the other way of viewing this. Who has more of an incentive? Are your children more important to you than the people who want to do your children harm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is a case all throughout warfare, all throughout human history. It is always easier to defend than it is to attack. And one of the main reasons behind this is the people who are defending, they have nothing to lose and everything to gain by defending. The people who are attacking, while they may have something, they have everything to lose if they fail. And they may be able to gain if they win. But the attacker has all of the loss on their shoulders. Like if they succeed, they get a minor increase. If they fail, they lose everything. That's typically how it works for the defenders, or for the attackers.
Yeah.
Well, the defender, they're like, well, right now I have no choice to fight. So what have I got to lose but to risk my life? Because, I mean, either I'm going to die because they're attacking me and I did nothing, or I'm going to fight back. So they have, like I said, they have everything to gain by defending themselves and nothing to lose, because either way, they're, whether they succeed or fail, right, they're going to be dead, right? The attacker could be like, hey, I can stay perfectly alive staying where I am. Or I can risk my life in battle for somebody's house? Wait a minute. Something doesn't make sense here.
Yeah. By the way, I would like to point out, in the Twitter group, I shared a link to an anarchy speech if you guys want to check it out while we're here or another time.
Yeah. So, the idea is the people who want to obey, the people who want order and a structure, the people who want things to be as peaceful as possible, the people who want to deal with each other with words rather than violence, outnumber the people who want violence. And if everybody is armed, which I would say they probably should be. I mean, even in the United States, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms for that specific purpose. You're supposed to be able to defend yourself even from the government. So and the idea is the people will always outnumber the authority. Right? This is if you look at the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers and Thomas Jefferson himself, there's lots of writing about this, where they're like, okay, so even if a tyrant becomes president and starts changing all the rules and takes over completely, that tyrant is going to be outnumbered by the armed citizens. The citizens will act as a militia and an army to keep that tyrant in check. And that's the same kind of mentality that is applied in an anarcho-capitalist society, is if all of the citizens of that place, they want to go about their lives in peace. They want to interact with people with money and with barter and trade. They want to kill people in the markets rather than physically. They want to dominate people in the financial or the sports or, in cooperative competition. So they're all playing by the same rules in that regard. So that is the majority of people. And anybody who wishes to break the rules of that, they're going to be held accountable by the larger group of society. So let's see. So I think I've made this example before, and I don't know if I know I've brought this up with my brother. And so this is how it works in my mind. Have you guys ever played an organized sport or game? Or sorry, an unorganized sport or game, like a pickup game, like Sandlot baseball?
I did see a riot in Ferguson where pretty much nobody got arrested and a lot of buildings got burned down and nothing was done about it.
Oh, okay. That's another problem that anarcho-capitalists have with our current society. Is it's someone else's responsibility. That's not my responsibility. That's the police that are supposed to handle that. The police and the law enforcement and the fire department are supposed to handle riots. It's not my business. It's not my. So, but there's an example.
So what we need is
wait.
the Second Amendment to take full effect for everyone to understand how important that is and why that was put there. If everyone has a weapon and a means to protect themselves, we're not going to have riots. People aren't going to be looting through your town because you're going to get your butt shot.
Yeah, have you
and
seen?
It doesn't matter. It's not going to be the police.
Videos?
I will protect my home. I'll protect my business.
Okay. So there was a video went pretty viral about the riots, and it was showing all of these other businesses that got smashed and were destroyed, and there was one business in the block that was pristine. It was untouched by fire. The windows were intact, and that's because on the roof there were, I can't remember if it was Koreans or Vietnamese. They were armed to the teeth, and they were shooting at anybody who came close to their business. And that's the only reason their business was protected, is because they were defending their own stuff, and they were perfectly within their rights.
Good for them.
In that situation, that's what anarcho-capitalists envision. Imagine if everybody on that block followed that same mentality of, I'm not relying on the police to protect my stuff. I'm the only one who has my best interest in mind. I'm the only one who can protect my own stuff. And if every rooftop had somebody like that armed to the teeth and were shooting, like, hey, if you're trying to loot my shop, you're going to get a bullet in the ass. If every shop owner on that block had that same mentality, that block would have gone untouched. That is
some fair points.
So that is how anarcho-capitalists envision their entire society would operate.
I think my main contention with this is just the term anarcho-capitalist, and that's why I'm a bit apprehensive about it. But I'm extremely for a very minimalist, limited government. But anarchy seems to state no government.
Yeah, so
which there has to be some form of law and order and rule.
Okay,
but as long as
agreed.
it's maintained within your community and your community agrees these are the rules.
Yeah, so
it's more of minimalist government or minimalized governed, not necessarily government.
Yes. So the way that anarcho-capitalists use anarchy, they don't say it is a society without rules, and this is one of the areas that a lot of people will say, oh, you want no rules and you want anything goes, and it's like, no, there's specific rules. The issue is we don't have rulers. There is no one specific person making those rules, that is what we see as the problem with our current society is. Right now, the U.S. federal government is the one who gets to make all the rules. And if they make a rule that is actually against what we believe or what we want our society to do, there's nothing we can do to stop that. So when the government...
You have the right to secede from the Union.
We used to have the right to secede from the Union.
I don't believe we do anymore.
The Civil War kind of quashed that. Because that's what the South was attempting to do, was to secede from the Union, and that started a huge war between the two factions. They should have been able to peacefully...
They had every legal right to do so.
Yeah, they should have been legally allowed to secede from the Union, because that was the understanding of states. That's what their states were promised when they entered into the Union to begin with, is hey, We're going to join this organization. We're going to join this federal government. The states' rights supersede the federal government, and you can leave at any time if you disagree with it. So that's what they sold the U.S. Constitution on. And all the state legislators and all that sort of thing, they're like, okay. And like, this is, if you read the Anti-Federalists and the Federalist Papers together, you can see all of the arguments for and against the Constitution. The Anti-Federalist is something that is a lot of people have never heard of and have never looked into. Those are the arguments against going into the Constitution. Reading that, you can kind of understand, oh, these are all of the people, and you're like, why would anybody, today we look at it and be like, why would anybody not want to join the Constitution? It's huge, like the federal government is so great and everything. But these were the people's fears, and the U.S. federal government became exactly everything these people were fearing it would be. That it's ignoring the states' rights, it's ignoring the people underneath it, it's become this huge umbrella over everyone, and it's a one-size-fits-all. It's the what I say goes, even if it doesn't apply to your situation. Even if you should be an exemption because your situation is different, it doesn't matter. This is a blanket term that applies to everyone. Those were the types of things, and the federal government, or the Anti-Federalists, I believe they also mention taxation. They were afraid of taxation because that's what they just escaped. It's like no taxation without representation. They wanted a federal government that, like, hey, we'll join your federal government, but we don't want to pay it a dime. As long as it can be completely sustained, and it was sustained up until 1913 without taxation. It was sustained entirely through lottery systems, where people would pay into a raffle in order to win some kind of prize. This is how the White House was built, is there was a raffle. They held a raffle like, hey, we're giving away this much stuff, and people paid into it, and more people paid into it than the worth of the things that the raffle was giving away, and they were able to use the excess funds to build the White House. A lot of the early government programs were built in this similar sort of way. It was like, hey, we're going to operate on donations and lottery. Yeah, actually, the state lottos are huge. States which have the lottery system, they make
that's where a good chunk of the education funds come from.
Yeah, they make a lot of money through a lottery system, and it's usually the states who don't have the lottery. They have a lot of. Those are the states that usually don't have enough money to pay for all of the programs they have. It's usually the states that are going bankrupt or having an issue. You look at do they have a lottery? Not likely, because that would be, hey, there's a lottery system, we have some way to finance the things that we can't afford with our regular taxation budget.
So that actually makes a lot of sense. And what it sounds like is this country actually started anarcho-capitalist.
Yes. And
that was kind of the premise. And they set it as a republic, as in, here's our basic rules, and that's it.
Yeah.
You guys go do what you want.
Yeah.
So
but then it turned more into mob rule, or, I mean, democracy is a good thing in small decisions, community things, family matters, stuff like that, because you want to know what's going on in your community. But me voting on what's happening over in California or what's happening over in this part of the country makes no sense. And just going full democratic or the full democracy without having these guidelines that say we're not supposed to be infringing on your rights, we're not supposed to be taking your weapons, and you should have be allowed to succeed. You're only should be trading in gold and silver. We're not ever going to issue a federal currency, which they went back on that. So it sounds like that almost is tried and true.
Yes.
That's how we started. That's what built this country up. And now we're having such a, stock market crash in the 1930s and 80s, 90s, 2008.
Yeah. And so that gives me to another example that when I bring it up, people are like, okay, so when I say, think about the Wild Wild West, and you think about the term Wild Wild West, and you envision gunfights at every bar and all that sort of thing, if you actually look at the history of that time in America, the Wild West wasn't so wild. It was sold by the media as the Wild West. I mean, that's how they sold papers and comic books and things like that. They were, they took these small incidents and blew them up to national news and that sort of thing. But people, if you look at the actual number of crimes that were documented and all that sort of thing during that history of American, during that time period of American history, the number of actual crimes is very, very limited. And the reason was, one of the huge reasons for this was, while there was a sheriff in town, that sheriff was elected by the local population, paid for by the local population, in order to protect the people of that community. And when somebody did come in and rob or steal or rape or murder or anything like that, the sheriff deputized as many people as were able and willing in the town and went out and, you know, brought the person to justice. That's the sort of thing that doesn't happen in the modern. I mean, the other thing is most of the people were armed. So if there's a bar fight that breaks out, well, then you've got one gun and there's 12 other people who are like, hey, you started a fight in our bar. Well, you got 12 guns that are trained on you, and you only have one gun and maybe 6 bullets. So this kind of deterred people from causing issues with a town. So while there were bank robbers and that sort of thing, usually the bank robbers could only travel so far, and the entire community, when the bank was robbed, they're like, that's all of our money. That's not somebody else's money down, millions of miles away. That's our community. That is our stuff. So the community banded together and went and tracked down the bank robbers. There were very few successful bank robbing gangs, and yet for some reason that's what Western comic books and Western movies and all that stuff focus on, the few that were successful. The majority of these towns lived in relative peace, but anytime you talk about the Wild Wild West and a positive thing, they're like, do you know how many ways there were to die and the life expectancy? And I'm like, look at the life expectancy of the entire planet at that time. It's about the same. People were dying of dysentery in the city as well as out in the Wild West. People were dying of snake bites in both places. It's not like the people in the cities were out there using the internet and were using electricity, and people in the Wild West were shitting outside. It's like, no, everybody was shitting outside. People were living under similar conditions. It's just the Wild West, people were more free, and they were safer. If you comparing this crime stats from the Western cities for the American frontier to the inner cities like St. Louis and New York. If you compare the crime stats, it is ridiculous how much more crime there is in the cities. I mean, that's still the case today. If you look at the cities versus the rural communities have relatively low crime rates compared to the cities. So it's a. But anytime I'm like, I bring up the Wild West as an example of kind of what an anarcho-capitalist society would be like. It was like, hey, you've got this local community, they provide for themselves, they trade with other local communities, and people are like, oh, well, you want us to go back to crapping outside and riding horses. I'm like, why would we lose cars? Why would we lose the internet? It's like, hey, we're just gonna.
I'm not asking to wear leather chaps and ride a horse. No thanks.
Well, I mean, I got no problem.
All right, I'm gonna head out, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right, yeah, it's been 2 hours. Yeah, thanks for showing up. So it's been about 2 hours. I think I'm gonna start to wrap this stream up. I know there's still tons of stuff in anarcho-capitalism that we didn't get to, but I think I got most of the main stuff out there. Yeah, so a lot of the people who have written about anarcho-capitalism do base it off of the early American history and saying this is what our society was supposed to be. This is how the founding fathers originally structured it, and we got away from that. We started centralizing power, and like the Lord Acton quote, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as time has gone by, the federal government has become more and more powerful, and thus more and more likely to be corrupt, and it's concentrating more and more power into one central place. The idea behind anarcho-capitalism is decentralized power. If it's decentralized as much as possible, you won't have a Hitler come in charge because there is no power structure for him to control and institute his genocidal regime. Like that only happens because there's a centralized power.
Communism can only happen with major governmental backbone behind it.
Yes.
There has to already be an infrastructure in place for that ever to take hold.
And here's another thing that so how long did it take for the U.S. government, we'll say for the U.S. government, to stop the tribes of the Native Americans? I like to use the term Injun. I don't know why. Well, it seems simpler and easier, and it's like offensive because it's outdated or something like that. But I prefer the term Injun, but when I say Injun, people don't know what I'm talking about. So the Native Americans, there's a bunch of these tribes, and they, some of them were peaceful, but a lot of them were actually hostile because, they thought the people were taking over their land and property, and so they would invade towns and stuff. and actually, in some cases, like Custard, where he actually antagonized them into fighting with him. How long did it take the organized United States to subdue all of these Native American tribes? Like, if you look at the history, it was decades. You're talking about people riding horseback with bows and arrows, maybe a couple guns, versus organized armies. And we're seeing a similar situation. Well, actually, this is, let me go back even further. The British versus the United States. So before the United States was the United States, when it was just, they made the Declaration of Independence, they, were no longer a country at all. There was no organized structure. There was no organized central body. The British Empire, who owned most of the world, it was at that time, the sun never sets on the British Empire, was the quote that was used to talk about Britain back then. The British Empire lost to a disorganized groups of ragtag rebels. And we're seeing something similar in modern times with the United States versus ISIS, and before that was Al-Qaeda, and versus these small groups of terrorists. The United States government, which spends more money than the next 30 other developed countries in the world, we spend more on our military. We have been in a 10-year plus war versus people with AK-47s, no military training, no aircraft, nothing. I mean, maybe a rocket launcher, improvised explosive devices. These people have next to nothing, and they are going toe-to-toe with the greatest military power on Earth. Could it be that maybe their structure of organization, their decentralized cells, there's a term for it called splinter cell. It's a name of a video game, but it's also how you would describe the ISIS organizational structure. There is no central command. So, hey, we killed Osama bin Laden, and they're still doing exactly what they did before we killed Osama bin Laden. Hey, we took out their leaders, so they no longer have structure. Oh, and there's still terrorist attacks going on. It's because it's decentralized. There is no central authority. Like there's that phrase, you cut off cut off the head of the snake and you kill the snake. Well, what if the snake doesn't have a head? It's just, what if it's, instead of a snake with a head, it's more like an ant colony?
Or an earthworm.
Yeah.
It's run by a religion, though.
Yeah, so all of those people,
motive,
so the motive behind it is an ideology.
Yeah.
And so the anarcho-capitalists say we need to have groups of people who stand by the ideology, or what they call an axiom, as the non-aggression principle. So if we have a cluster of people that have the non-aggression principle as our core ideology, as our core tenet of belief system, we could have something that is decentralized, that functions more like what. Well, while I disagree with the primary tenets of ISIS and all that sort of thing, and what they're actually trying to do, whether because they're being aggressive and they're taking over things and they're bombing, and so while I disagree with their solution, their tactics are extremely effective. So I'm not praising them based on their oh look, they've bombed all these infidel Americans. No, I don't see it that way. I see it as their tactics is what I'm saying. Their tactic is sound because it's the same tactic we used to fight off the British. The same tactic that many of the Native Americans used to hold off the invasion of the United States, or the invasion with quotes around it, or the encroachment of their territory by the United States, and it was very successful at defending against it. Ultimately, it failed because they ran out of people and they ran out of resources and all that sort of thing. But if you're talking about an entire country that has the same, well, that's the other thing. If the Native American tribes had all banded together against the United States, they never would have been subdued. In fact, they might have actually overcome the United States, but because they were so divided. So even though they're all so each group was defending itself against a larger force, as opposed to
they weren't united under any sort of ideology or principle.
Had one,
they were just their own separate little pods.
Had one chief gone around and united all the Native American tribes versus the United States, the entire West Coast might even be its own country, controlled by nothing but the Native Americans. It's there's another example of this. of that sort of thing. You know the story of Lawrence of Olivia, or sorry, Lawrence of Arabia? That's the same kind of thing. As he was a British soldier, and he was so he went to the Arabia area. I don't know where exactly. If that, so I know that includes parts of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. So and I believe Syria and Egypt as well. And he went around and he got a bunch of these different tribes to join together. And with all of them fighting together, they were able to overpower. So it was the British enemy at the time. I forget what it was. I forget who they were fighting at the time. But basically, he was one guy in the British army with maybe a couple other people. But it was one dude, and he went around, gathered up all these tribes, and formed this large army. And then they won the fight for the British, and then they all went back to what they were doing before. And they all disbanded, and they all went back to... But it was a bunch of disorganized groups all combined under one centralized force. They fought back this group that was invading their area and was an enemy for the British. And then once they were done, they disbanded, and all of that went away. So they all went back to what they were doing originally. They all went back to their... And then some of them started infighting and all that sort of thing. So that is kind of the mentality that anarcho-capitalists would have as far as how it would function as far as national defense. Is like, hey, we've got all of these decentralized groups and all these different communities, and yeah, sure, they trade with one another, but they don't have to trade with one another. They can come in together and combine when they want to and separate whenever they want to. And if there is a situation where there is a larger force that is invading a territory, they will all join together because it's in their best interest to defend their entire area. They will all join together, fight off that attacker, and they will have a better time of fighting off that attacker because they are a decentralized organization, and because they can do things like skirmishes and random, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Apache-style warfare, because that's what the U.S. were using against the British. So where it's, hey, there's this big group that's trying to invade, and they have to have a central place to do everything. We can send one group of people to attack here, and then they attack, they ambush, they run away. They attack and ambush, run away, bomb whatever, subterfuge and all that sort of thing. The attacking force is not going to be able to sustain, whereas the disorganized unit, they don't have to worry about the sustainment and all of that sort of thing. They don't have to worry about because there is no central force. Is like, oh, hey, this one group that invaded, they got killed and and they weren't successful. Well, there's millions of others just like them that are willing to fight and do whatever they need to do to fight off this attacker. So I mean, I guess maybe that was. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I laid out there. So hopefully I wasn't doing gish galloping because I believe it was all centralized on that. They decentralized a decentralized force that can come together when it needs to is a better system than the centralized government force that we are currently relying on. All right. All right. I do have one other example because I mean that's where technology is going, like cloud computing right now. So we went from centralized computers like the supercomputers, and then we decentralized into server and clients, and then we went to distributed networks, and now we're looking at distributed cloud computing where there is no centralized server. It's all across the entire internet, and you have kind of a client server, and peer-to-peer and Bitcoin are huge parts of this because those are decentralized networks, and those are doing much better than the centralized networks. You can see this phenomenon everywhere. The more you look at it, and the more you're like, oh, okay, that's... Every time you see something that is decentralized and has more than one person making the decisions, and that is the issue anarcho-capitalists ultimately see with government. Oh, man.
That's your alarm?
Yeah, but this one actually does mean something because I've got a business meeting to go to. So in I've got about 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna have to end this stream. This one went a little bit longer than I expected. We spent way longer on Marxism than I anticipated, but it's an interesting topic, and it's and I talked way more than I planned to. I'm sorry about that. So
Oh, that's fine. Either way to get information out.
Yeah. And so what I was...
So if it wasn't you talking,
yeah.
somebody else would be talking. That's the whole point of these chats.
So my view is that every time there is a decentralized group, it always overtakes the centralized group. This is competition, and this is what a lot of people who talk about free markets in general, they're like, hey, I don't have all the answers, but everybody working towards a common purpose, somebody's going to succeed. And somebody's like, the fact that there is an iPhone to begin with, the fact that there is a smartphone, like, no one person could have made that possible. It is a bunch of people working together, making individual pieces, and it's all, it's all through the mechanisms of the market, all working towards a common purpose, but no individual is saying, oh, I'm creating a battery because it's eventually going to go to the iPhone. No, they're creating a battery, and they're trying to sell that battery wherever they can sell it for any kind of device. And then people are like, oh, hey, you've got a battery for sale. You know what? I could use that battery inside my cell phone. And oh, hey, you've got this small screen, or you make computer screens. Hey, can you make a computer screen that's this small and it has these features on it? That's the sort of thing. It's all this, all of these disjointed efforts combined into something that is much greater than the sum of its parts. And the problem with trying to do it all in one place, which is what we're doing right now with our justice system, which is what we're doing right now with our laws and our rules, is we're combining it into one place. And I think that's the same problem that Marxists are trying to do. They're trying to centralize the economy, and everything that you could say that is wrong with them trying to centralize the economy, you could apply to us trying to centralize our governance. So all of the critiques that you have against communism, I would say apply those same critiques to how we structure our law, to how we structure our rulers. Our tax system, everything that that the government does. Apply the same kind of logic, the same kind of, why would you want that all in one location? Wouldn't you rather have a bunch of people working on the same issue independently, and then whichever ones work better, those are the ones that people adopt? Instead, you have hey, government made a decision, could be right, could be wrong. We don't know because we have nothing to compare it to. Alright, so I think with that, I'm going to end my little rant, unless you guys can say something. I am going to have to let this end in a minute or two.
No, I'm pretty good. I think that summed up a lot of the basic premise of anarcho-capitalism. That was the whole purpose of the discussion. And honestly, I'm in agreement with quite a bit of that. I've always been for a very minimalist government. I think it's more of just the anarcho tag that's tied with it that gives a connotation of disarray and, rampant violence and chaos.
Yeah, and for me, that was the hardest step. So I got down from, so I used to be a staunch Republican. I voted for George Bush. The next year, I didn't vote for anybody, and then I voted for Gary Johnson, because that was kind of so when I was firmly in favor of George Bush, and I was like, oh yeah, he's doing the right thing, and that's when I joined the military, and I was all gung-ho about the military. And it was while I was in the military that I started looking into this stuff and started researching this and started learning all of this sort of thing. And it got me to the point where it's like, oh, the original United States was a minarchist, that's what we need. And then it took, so that whole process, I was talking about, that's a couple of months, like, 3 or 4 months when I was working through and getting down to the minarchist and learning about minarchism and why that was better than what we were currently doing. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I got to that within a couple of months, no more than 6 months. Getting from that point to anarcho-capitalism took me 3 years. Because I had heard a bunch of the arguments and I kept dismissing them, and I was looking into it and I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. Why would anybody think that this is successful? Why would anybody think that this could? But so it took. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, maybe that does make sense, and hey, that's actually a really good argument and that sort of thing. But it took me about 3 years to make that full transition to be like, oh, yeah, anarcho-capitalism could be possible. And if it's not, the worst case scenario we go to a minarchist society. This is what I want to end with here. And I think I can't remember if I said this last week or not. So socialism and ultimately communism requires everybody to participate. And so when socialism fails, it hurts everybody. It brings everything down with it. And so if socialism fails, it doesn't just... It's not like we'll just undo this one policy or these little things and we'll get back on track. Usually by the time socialism has gone full swing, the entire population is so stuck in socialism that they can't just repeal one law or undo one thing, because at that point they're running out of food, they're running out of resources, everything is falling apart and everything collapses in on itself. Conversely, on the other end, when you have an anarcho-capitalist society, if it happens like you're saying, like, hey, a warlord comes up or some kind of person tries to take over and is just dominating everything and our system fails, worst case scenario, we can easily establish a minarchist government. If that is what is required to keep an anarcho-capitalist society stable, we can implement a minarchist government. That is, it's not throwing out the baby with the bathwater sort of thing. The step from anarcho-capitalism to a minarchist government, they're very minimal. And the way that I envision going to an anarcho-capitalist society is starting with our government right now and chipping away, bit by bit, the pieces that are there until we get down to that core structure, and then finally removing the core structure of the government. Doing that, if at any point along the deconstruction of our government, if at any point there's huge outcomes that are detrimental or that cause unintended consequences, well then we just put that one piece back. I don't know, you can't see my other hand here, I went kind of off camera. So we take it from here and we're working our way back and we get to here. But there's a problem at say there's like 10 things left in the government that the government is still doing, and remove the 10th one and now there's only 9. Well, then everything starts to fall apart and everybody goes, well, we just go back to 10. And then hey, maybe those 10 functions of the government, maybe those are the 10 functions that we can't do without. Whereas socialism, you've got this huge control, and if you try to take back one thing, it still doesn't stop the whole thing from collapsing, because I mean, it's very rare that you would get a situation like in any of these socialist socialist countries that are trying to achieve communism. If you look back at them, it's not one policy, it's not one thing that they tried to do that caused their collapse. It's always like it's a huge interconnected network of laws and principles and stuff that all work together to bring it down. So if you take away one, oh well, there's still 100 other things that are still causing the society to collapse. So you'd have to repeal all 100 of them, and that's not going to happen when they're enacted and that sort of thing. So that is my perspective on it, and I think with that I'm going to close, and it's my stream, so I get the final word, and so you guys don't get to say nothing. And I know, Son of Lucifer, you didn't say much the entire stream, but thanks for hanging out with us.
No problem.
Yeah, good to have you.
Thank you.
Alright, so... I guess I should say, like and subscribe and use YouTube the way that it's kind of obvious to use. You know, like, subscribe, share, and all of that stuff that everybody ends their video with because they have to, because apparently people are stupid. I don't know.
Yeah.